What's going on, Bears family? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot, soon to be number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm your host, Haize, one of the three hosts here holding it down for C-Dub and Bobby on the daily episode. And today, we'll be talking about another Pro Football Focus article in which they have now ranked the Bears secondary the worst in the NFL. We'll be briefly touching on that, more so talking on what expectations that we have for the Bears secondary in this upcoming season. We'll also ask the question is, will Roquan Smith sign a contract extension with the Chicago Bears? He is playing on the last year of a fifth-year option with the Chicago Bears, and so we'll be talking about his impact on this team and if we can see him signing a contract extension before the end of the season with the Chicago Bears. We'll also be getting into the X factors and how Justin Jones, with Larry Ogunjobi and Robert Quinn possibly not being on this team. Well, Larry Ogunjobi's not, right? He was supposed to be. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Justin Jones and his expectations as he is slated to possibly be a huge X factor for the Chicago Bears defensive line. We'll get into all that and more on today's Chicago Bears Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
All right, Bears fans. So we're back here with the daily episode. Told you guys we weren't going to take another break anytime soon. And Pro Football Focus gave me the perfect thing to sound off on initially. Again, Pro Football Focus has ranked the Chicago Bears very low. So as they come out with something, it's going to be something every single season. So now our secondary was ranked, and they ranked every NFL team secondary, and the Bears wasn't the absolute worst, but we did rank 31st out of 32 teams in the NFL as the worst secondary heading into the 2022-23 season. Now, this is one that is to be expected. We have two rookies that are set to play big parts on the Chicago Bears secondary. We also have Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson, Eddie Jackson coming off not a great season. So I understand a lot of the questions. This is one of the ones that honestly I understand more so than anything. And I'm going to read some of the quotes and some of the reasons that they gave. So one of this is, again, this is a quote from the article. It's worrisome that the Bears secondary lacks a single player who they can point to and say for certain he'll be reliable. Eddie Jackson is supposed to be that guy and is being paid as such, but even he has earned coverage grades of 56.9 and 55.8 the past two seasons. While Pro Football Focus pointed out the youth and experience as the determining factor of the uncertainty with the Chicago Bears, they also did rank Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson as very low on experienced secondary members. So with that being said, right, this secondary, as we know, it does have some things to prove. We think and have high expectations for Kyler Gordon and Roquan Brisker, just how this Bears team has talked about them, what they've talked about, how they've talked, and how it seems like they have come in to OTAs and minicamp so far being very well prepared and impressing the Chicago Bears coaching staff, especially when you look at us having a defensive-minded coach in Matt Eberflus and the fact that, that he thinks very highly of these guys. So the question with that being said is that while we do have some major questions in the secondary for the Chicago Bears, how do we answer those questions? How early do we answer those questions? Me, C-Dub, and Bobby have talked about it. This Bears secondary is going to be tested very early and often in this NFL season. Yes, we have, I think it was like the easiest schedule or whatever in the NFL, but we are facing really good quarterbacks, and we're going to see what we have from them, and they're going to face that test very early. If this secondary can step up in a way that's unexpected, if Kyler Gordon, Roquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson has a bounce back year, right? If those things happen, and Jalen Johnson, while, they talk about Jalen Johnson as having a question mark and things like that, I do trust that Jalen Johnson is going to be a very big part and an effective part of the secondary. But with the questions that we have to answer with this team, with this young secondary, with the youth that comes in here, again, as I've been saying with so many things, the chip on the shoulder that this team is possibly developing, the fact of what they already have, Kyler Gordon and the way that he's talked, attacking, getting turnovers, forcing turnovers. If this Chicago Bears secondary can come in and do the things that they have been talking about so far early in this offseason, in the time that they've come together, and they build chemistry with one another, we can be talking about a team that comes in ranked as the 31st by Pro Football Focus, the 31st secondary in the NFL, that can definitely be more in the middle of the pack there, if not higher than that. Again, don't really expect them to rank higher than that. I don't think that the team wins enough games for them to come out higher than the middle of the pack of the NFL. But in this first season coming together, this first season under coach Matt Eberflus, I do think that this secondary is going to answer a lot of the questions that people do have in them. And, you know, we talk about the rookies in this, and I really do think I'm a big Kyler Gordon guy. I know some people are higher on Roquan Brisker, but the thing is, and the benefit of that is we don't have to worry about one or the other. We have both of them on this team. And with them coming into a secondary with Eddie Jackson, with Jalen Johnson, I do think that they're going to be a pretty solid. The secondary is one of the things that I've talked about where I personally don't have a lot of questions there. I look at this and I see the way and I see the potential behind it. We do, of course, have to see executed out there on the field. So let me know what you guys think about the Bears secondary being ranked as one of the worst in the NFL. And do you think they're going to step out and be better than that in this season? And hey, let's do this. Out of Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Eddie Jackson, and Roquan Brisker, who do you think is going to have the best season? Let me know that. Who do you think has the most tackles as well? So it's two separate questions that we'll get into there. Let me know the answers to both of those down below. Next topic for today's episode is Roquan Smith. And this is an interesting one that I wanted to talk about is because Roquan Smith going into a fifth-year option, if he doesn't have a contract extension, he could very well leave the Chicago Bears in next offseason. Now, Smith last season, 163 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, and an interception from him. Pretty solid season, but we're heading into a season now where he's going to be looked at to do more things and step up in a major way. Now, again, I'm not looking at Roquan Smith as if he's going to disappoint. I don't think that. He's going to come in, he's going to play very solidly, but does he play solidly in a way that the Bears go ahead and extend him during the season? We know the Bears sit at $20 million in cap space currently, which is one of the highest in the NFL currently at this point in the offseason. Do they look to eat into some of that to go ahead and lock up Roquan Smith to be a part of this Bears defense for the foreseeable future? Again, we know that they were hesitant and did not sign a lot of the older players on this team, on this defense, but Roquan fitting their timeline, 25 years old, could very well be, in a lot of ways, is going to be looked at as kind of to be a veteran on this team in some ways. But with that being said, will they go ahead and extend him? That is a question that's out there that hasn't been talked about a lot. I think right now we all do expect the Chicago Bears to be very protective of that money in case they do need to make a deal, in case something happens as we head into the actual season and get and preparing for preseason and training camps to open. But at this point, like, do they go ahead and eat into some of that cap space? Do they want to maintain the most of it and just negotiate with him this season? Now, the one thing with that is that Roquan Smith, if he comes in and he plays with the added weight he's going to have on him to step up defensively, if he shines in that, you can very well be talking about his contract and his salary demands going up considerably. Whereas if you go ahead and lock him in now, you could get a little bit of a discount on that. And again, not a huge, and by discount, I don't mean undercutting him. You're still paying him what he's worth, now, versus if he comes in, has a huge season for you, considering the other players that we're missing, and he gets that. Now, the question that remains here, and the question that I did read out there, is that if the Bears aren't looking to extend Roquan Smith, right, do they consider trading him? Now, again, I'm not calling for that. Let me be clear here. This is me presenting this for the case of conversation, not because I'm thinking that this is something that the Bears should do, considering all the players that they have given up, and we still don't know what's going on with Robert Quinn. But if the Bears, instead of risk losing him in free agency for nothing, do they consider moving him for more draft capital? As we know, the Bears trying to replenish some of that draft capital the former regime gave up. Let me know what you guys think about that down below. Do you think Roquan Smith ends up signing a contract extension with the Chicago Bears? Should they try to do that in the midst of the season and not wait to next offseason? And then if the Bears don't see it, do you think they should consider trading their 25-year-old linebacker in Roquan Smith? Let me know what you guys think about that one down below. I appreciate that so much. Next up, we're going to talk about and end the show on the fact that the Larry Ogunjobi signing fell through for legitimate reasons. He ended up signing a 1-year deal with Pittsburgh. We're not going to get into that. Akeem Hicks as well. The Bears decide not to even negotiate contracts. And at one point in this offseason, it was looked at as maybe Akeem Hicks and Larry Ogunjobi really solidifying this defensive line to make us a monster on the defensive line. Instead, we had to pivot. Justin Jones will be our 3 tech. I do want to ask, like, with Justin Jones and Travis Gibson to a lesser extent, right? With Jones, coming into the season, being that 3 tech, in his last season with the Los Angeles Chargers, getting 18 total pressures, 2 sacks, 2 hits, 14 hurries, and a pass rush grade of 61.1, which ranked 105th in the NFL overall. How important is it going to be for his impact and the impact that he has on this team, and with this defensive line that may be missing a veteran in Robert Quinn? How important now does he become? Is he now the X factor on that Bears defensive line to really step up in the absence of more veteran players that maybe were expected to do a little bit more? That's the question that's to be asked with Justin Jones. Does he step up in that way? And for example, do I think that he? Yeah, I mean, listen, I look at Justin Jones and I see a player that is very much so going to step up and can step up, has the ability to step up. Yeah, not expecting him to come in and give Robert Quinn type numbers from last season. That would be ridiculous. Nobody's expecting that from him. At least I don't think that they are. But with that being said, considering the firepower that Ryan Poles tried to bring in with Larry Ogunjobi, and who knows, maybe if they did sign Larry Ogunjobi, they would have tried to keep Hakeem Nicks. Probably not, though, because Larry Ogunjobi is considerably younger. But with that being said, does Justin Jones step up in a big way? Is he that X factor for the Chicago Bears and really helping keep some pressure on the quarterback, which we'll need, things like that? I look at it this way. I look at Justin Jones, really at this point, he's playing with house money. He comes into a situation that he's going to probably be relied to do a little bit more on than what was expected from him initially to start the season, which is absolutely fine. And how does he excel in that, right? How does he come in when he steps up? How does he prove that? How does he carry the energy of the Chicago Bears defense, of that defensive line? I look at this and I say that Justin Jones can absolutely make us forget about Larry Ogunjobi, right? And that's the biggest thing right now is that, it's easy to compare, and people will be doing it all season. I'm sure C-Dub will be doing it because he really wanted Larry Ogunjobi here, is looking at what we have. Let's look at our starters, right, on that defensive line. So we're looking at Robert Quinn, if he does come back, if not Travis Gibson there, which is going to be another X factor. At nose tackle, we're looking at Angelo Blackson. The 3 tech is going to be Justin Jones. And the other defensive end is going to be Al-Quinn Muhammad. Again, barring what happens with Robert Quinn. We'll see that. So looking at that defensive line, that's not a defensive line that you necessarily that screams out at you and you get big scared at or anything like that. But it is a defensive line that you can come in. They're going to play hard. They're going to play tough. And if they do those things, and the secondary, which we talked about early in this episode, also does their thing, then we can be talking about a much better defense than what people are giving the Chicago Bears credit for. But I want to ask this question. I'm going to leave it at this. Who do you think has a better season in the NFL? Is it going to be Justin Jones or Larry Ogunjobi? Let me know that. It doesn't really matter because, like I said, Larry Ogunjobi is not here. He's not going to be here. But who do you think has the better season in the NFL this season? Again, individually. Let me know what you guys think about that one down below. But that is it for Chicago Bears Central today. Thank you for tuning in to the show. You guys have no idea how much I appreciate all the support on the podcast side as well as the YouTube side. If you are on the podcast side, make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube. If you're on the YouTube side, don't forget, you can take Chicago Bears Central with you on the go on our podcast, which is just the audio version of the YouTube video, but that's available on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Play, everywhere the podcasts are available. That's where Chicago Bears Central is available. But that is it for today. If you want to follow me personally, you can do so at CEO Haize. That's CEOHAIZE. If you want to follow the podcast, you can do so at Shy Bears Central on every social media platform. If you want to send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, Chicago Bears Central at gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave us a text and or voicemail, the number to do so is 773-270-2799. Again, bear down, people. Like I like to end every episode on. Go Bears. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.